Good evening. I'd like to call the Board of Appeals meeting to order. Today is September the 12th, 2018. On our agenda, the first item is the approval of the minutes for August 8th, 2018. Can I get a motion for the approval of the minutes?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes from our last meeting, Wednesday, August 8th, 2018.
I second that motion.
Do we have any discussion on the minutes? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, the motion passes 4-0. Okay, so this evening we're here for a public hearing. It's Board of Appeals 795-32018. It is a special exception for a family daycare up to 12 children located at 15 Redding Ridge Road in the R90 medium density residential zone. And I'd like Ms. Jasmine Forbes, if you could go ahead and present the official record.
Thank you. Good evening. So this is a public hearing on Board of Appeals case BOA-7953-2018. The hearing was published in accordance with the requirements of the city charter and code on the city's website, and the property was properly posted. At the present time, there are 32 exhibits in the record files. They are referenced in an exhibit list in the files. The individual exhibits may be reviewed during the course of the meeting or in the Planning and Code Administrative Office during regular hours at City Hall or on the city's website. Any objections to the receipt of any exhibit should be noted prior to the closing of the record, otherwise they will be deemed received in evidence. So the applicant this evening is requesting a special exception to permit a family daycare up to 12 children at 15 Redding Ridge Drive. You see here on the aerial, the property highlighted in red is zone R90, medium density residential. And in the R90 zone, family daycare facilities accommodating up to 8 children is permitted by right as an accessory use. Family daycare in single family dwellings accommodating more than 8 but no more than 12 requires a special exception in the R90 zone. The applicant currently has a daycare certificate from the Maryland State Department of Education for 8 children. So this special exception is a petition for an additional 4 children. This application is the first to be submitted since a text amendment that was approved by the Mayor City Council in November 2017, which had the city look into amending our child care definitions and kind of breaking out the definition between family child care and commercial child care. So, and it kind of went in line with the county's resident child care requirements, because I found out the city was more restrictive on their use, what was allowed. So the applicant went before the Planning Commission on September 5th for the recommendation. There was opposition on this application from the public because of concerns of traffic and parking, which is why the Planning Commission recommended approval, but added that 5th condition that's on the draft resolution. So after the Planning Commission meeting, staff have received additional written testimony in opposition of this family daycare, and staff has went out and observed the daycare one day in the morning and hasn't really noticed any changes in traffic. So for this evening, for this special exception, it's the board's responsibility to make a finding that the additional 4 children from the daycare will create any positive or negative adverse impact to the neighborhood, such as either traffic or noise. And just to note that any questions about size of the space, staff to child ratio, that is regulated by the state and not regulated by the city. So I will have the owner, Anila Mirage, who will go over her application with you guys this evening.
Okay. Thank you,
Hi.
Jasmine. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Before we start, I'll need to do the oath for the witnesses, for yourself, and then is there anybody in the audience that is planning to testify this evening? If you are, if you can go ahead and just raise your right hand, and if you think you might, just go ahead and do it anyway. Okay, there. So, do you solemnly swear and affirm, under the penalties of perjury, that the testimony that you are about to give in this matter shall be the truth and nothing but the truth? Yes. Okay, thank you very much. Please proceed.
Hi, good evening. My name is Anila Miraj, and I'm here for a special inspection exception for 12 children. I already operating for license for 8 in my basement, and the child care is located at 15 Reading Ridge Drive, Gaithersburg, Maryland, and I have my daycares operate 7 a.m. till 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, and I have 2 helpers. They don't drive; they come from bus, and I have right now I have 7 kids and 1 of my own. So I have 8 license for 8. I have my own kids, 1-year-old, and I have 7 kids so far. Okay. We have 1 garage parking. About the parking, we have 1 garage parking and 4 driveway parking, and along with the street parking. And we have 3 cars, our own. The 2 cars my son drive. They attend college, Montgomery College, so they leave in the morning at around 7:30, and they have work and there is classes, so they probably out for the day. They come back around 4 or 5. And one of the third parking, my husband drive, and he works from 9 a.m. till 9 p.m. And the kids arrive around. The first kid arrive at 7 a.m. in the morning. The second around 7:15 a.m. in the morning, and I have 2 siblings. They came around 9 o'clock, and I have 2 twins. They come around 8:30. So the kids come in a different timings in the morning, and so there's gonna be 5 cars that come in the morning to drop their kids, and they park in the driveway, sometime in the street parking, and in the evening kids leave around between 5 to 6:30 p.m. but they're very different timings. Sometime 5 o'clock, sometime 5:15 and 6 o'clock, and yeah, typically. And I also have fire inspection for 12. And the fence, we have a fence permit, and we'll install as soon as possible. And yeah, so far.
Thank you. Is there any of the exhibits you'd like to go through that was included in the packet? Or I'll open it up to the board for questions. Anything else?
You can look at
Yeah.
the photos of the space. So here's her emergency escape plan. So
Yeah, and all the
if you want to go
pictures.
through.
Oh, I have to go through it.
No, you can just explain.
Yeah, this is the activity area. We do activities like Play-Doh and coloring, painting. This is usually like free play times and readings, circle times. Yeah, the same area. Yeah, this is a napping area. And that's that's also free activity play time area. Yeah, that's the same.
Top.
Yeah. There's also a free play and napping area included. That's a kitchen area, like lunch and breakfast and eating area. These are the equipment. Play area, napping area. Yeah, that's a play area.
So it's showing a lot of
Yeah,
angles
that's
of
a
this.
that's a reading and circle time area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's all good. Is anything else you want?
No.
Okay. Leave it to the board for any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you very
Yeah.
much. I think at this time I'll go ahead and open it up to the board for additional questions. Go ahead and start with
Yeah.
Robert.
Do you have any applications already in the works to expand on the 8 that you have now?
I already have for 8 for license. For
I know, but I mean, you want to be able to go to 12. Do you already have applications now?
No, I can't do it. I need to approve zoning approval first.
Right.
And then I can go through it.
Well, that's what I was wondering, if you had some prospective
Yeah.
people to come in. And you said that the space regular, that's all
Yep.
county and everything, so.
That's all because the Maryland State Department of Education issues the final certificate.
Okay.
So they have their own regulations
Okay.
for size and, how many kids to adult within a family daycare.
What ages do you have right now, the range?
Right now I have 1 year old, 4 years old, 3 years old.
Okay.
Yeah, mix age group.
I'm sorry, it was 1, 3, or 1, 4, and 8?
1, 3, and 4.
1, 3, and 4.
Okay.
Is that kind of your specialty age group, or it just happens to work out that way that you have no school-age children?
I can have school age, but right
Right.
now I don't have it.
It's just how it works out.
Yeah.
It changes all the time, I realize that.
Mhm.
And just to clarify, when the caregivers or parents do drop the children off, they do fully park in the driveway or on the street and bring the children up to the house,
Mhm,
correct?
yeah.
Okay.
Additional questions?
One more.
Yeah, sure, no.
Because bring it up to almost what we have with the hurricane coming in this weekend. Say if emergency happens real quick and you need to move out real quick, do you have a means of moving all the kids at once with, car seats and everything? Or do you have to wait for the parents to come over and then all of a sudden you get a rush of, 8 cars all at once?
You can say how many employees you have that work.
I have 2 helpers.
Okay.
So with me there are 3 people there, so we can accommodate with that.
You would mention that you've applied for a fence permit,
Fence permit I already have, yeah.
and I think staff shared that with me as well.
Mhm.
Are you going to fence your backyard completely?
Do you want to pull up?
Yeah, I can,
And we'll identify the exhibit, because I think it's a new exhibit since the package.
So here is the plat showing the fence. So the fence is going to be kind of installed on the sides to enclose the
So
entire
Jasmine, does
rear.
that
On the
have,
back
does that
side,
have
the
an
big
exhibit
wall.
number or not yet?
Currently, it does not.
Okay, so this is going to be exhibit number 33.
And when is that approved by staff at this point, or are they still going through the approval process?
So the fence permit is currently approved by staff and is issued. So now it's
Okay.
up to the owner to install the fence and then call for an inspection to come out and inspect the work.
And is your goal to get that fence installed prior to increasing your capacity to 12?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Other questions? I have a few.
Oh,
Okay.
please.
Jasmine, could you bring up Exhibit 12? So, for the petitioner, your first name is Anila?
Anila.
Anila, okay. Could you just perhaps describe, I see where your house is there, number 15, and it looks like your backyard is adjacent to Darnestown Road?
Yep.
Okay.
And there's a big wall.
There's a big wall. Okay, all right.
Which is where that fence is only on the,
Okay, okay.
yeah.
All right, so you don't really have any neighbors behind you?
No.
Okay, okay, all right, there too. Okay, and so then you have 2 single-family homes on each side of your
Each side,
property?
mhm.
Okay, all right. Okay, there. So, are there any townhouses in your development nearby? No. Okay, all right, okay. Another question that I had, I just wanted to, so you say that So you basically have children coming at staggered times,
Yeah.
and so one comes at 7, one comes at 7:15.
7:15, around 8 o'clock, 8:30.
8:30.
Yeah,
And
two
then
kids come 8:30, the twins.
twins. Okay.
And the two siblings come 9 o'clock, exactly 9 o'clock, 9:05.
No, sure. Okay. And then their pickup time is about what time?
They start from 5 o'clock.
5
So, yeah, like 5, 5:30, 5:15, 6 o'clock.
Okay. And then your daycare facility is open until 7 p.m.?
6.
6 p.m. Okay, all right, so 6 p.m. there. So everyone has to be picked up by 6?
By 6 o'clock, yeah.
Okay, all right. I think one of the, I think that was one, okay. And there was another, in our packet here, we also had, just looking at the parking that you have on the street there, perhaps we could just look at exhibit number 18, Jasmine? Okay, and that there's,
So that's the sign posting signs.
that's
for
the sign
public
posting.
parking.
I was trying to get, maybe it's this one. I think it's a little further down, let's see. Is it exhibit?
You talk about the parking space photos, exhibit number 7.
Yes. Okay, so this is the driveway here.
Okay.
Okay, so you can have up to 6 cars parked in your driveway at one time, okay?
She
Yeah,
can
I
park
think
4.
4,
Park
not
4,
6, yeah.
okay. 4 there, okay.
And one in the garage.
You can kind of fit a car
Oh,
on
yeah.
the side. There's a bit of
Yeah,
asphalt on the
there's
side.
one
there's
car, yeah.
A little adjacent area there, okay.
I have something else.
The
for
total
Michelle.
6, yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Ashley.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. I do have a question about, so you mentioned that your 2 helpers arrive by bus, so then they walk from a bus stop that is where to your house?
Yep.
So like down the street a bit, so they're
Mhm.
also pedestrians in this area?
Mm.
Yeah, okay.
I have
Go ahead.
another question. So you're currently licensed daycare for 8
Mhm.
right now,
Mhm.
and I know part of that process in licensing is establishing insurance. I was just wondering if you could talk about how your insurance, how do you buy the insurance, or is it a rider to your homeowner's policy, or is it a separate insurance policy?
We have a separate insurance policy, but we did not bring with us. We have
Can
a
you-
separate insurance policy for the daycare.
May I introduce
Just
yourself?
state your name for the
State your
record.
name.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Syed Mustafa. I'm Anila Meraj husband. So we have insurance policy separately for the daycare, but we don't have it as.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of, I happen to be in this business, so that's the reason why I can
No, we have that.
ask these questions. So a lot of policies, when you endorse your homeowner's policy, it establishes up to 8 kids. And then after that, it's considered a basically commercial
Yeah,
business.
it's supposed to be changed, yes.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
so
we'll change it.
the insurance is gonna be established, and you're gonna make sure that it will cover it up to 12 kids.
Mhm.
Definitely,
Yeah,
we'll do
definitely.
that.
Okay.
And I know you mentioned in our packet that you've been in this line of work for 15 years. How long have you been operating out of this specific house with the 8 children?
With 8 children, it's gonna be 5 years.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, got license 2013.
Were you asking for the specific property?
Yes, the specific
This
property.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, sorry.
2 months ago, actually.
Oh, we
Oh,
just
2
bought
months.
this property
Okay.
actually 2-3 months ago, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that clarification, Jasmine.
And so where you lived prior, how long did you live there?
10531 Polk Square Court,
We live in the same
Gaithersburg.
street.
It's just quarter mile away from this
Okay.
place. Yeah.
And you had your daycare, that's where you established the daycare
Right.
business?
Yeah.
And you obviously purchased a new house and you want to continue
Yeah.
that? Okay.
Let's see, is there any other questions? Just bear with me for 1 minute here. Okay. So you mentioned you had 2 helpers that come, do they drive also to your home?
No, they come from bus.
They come from where, I'm sorry?
Bus.
Oh, from the
took
bus, so they take the
bus,
bus
yeah.
there, okay.
They take bus.
Okay, all right. Okay. Any other questions from the board?
None from me.
Okay. So at this time, I'm going to ask if we have anyone that would like to present any kind of public testimony at the hearing? And if so, would you come forward to the microphone, to the podium here, and please state your name and your street address. And I'll need you to come to the podium for the recording here so we can hear it.
Could
And
you
the-
put this back on the neighborhood, where her house is?
Sure.
Okay.
So do you want
The aerial, yeah.
Excuse me before you start, excuse me, and if you could state your name, where you live, and we'll limit the testimony to 3 minutes. And if you think you're going to speak 3 minutes, I'll set the timer. Otherwise, we'll just go. with
I
it.
hope I'm under that. If this is too loud or too low, please tell me.
Okay.
My
let's go
name
ahead.
is Robert Mitchell. I live at 13 Turnham Court. I'm not going to address the individual factors, although I must say that some of the traffic just described in the coming and going sounds like a lot of congestion. I think sometimes you have to back up and look at this thing from a little greater distance. When the people in Wesley bought their houses, they came into a real estate office and they had a big table and they had a layout of all of Wesley. That layout had 2 entrances and 2 exits. So those people bought into traffic for 2 entrances and 2 exits. But a few years ago, they decided not to put in the second entrance and exit. So the people on Treeworthy are putting up with all of the traffic for the whole development, which is not what they bought into. And I happen to think it was unfair to them, but that happens to be what we're doing. A few years ago, another issue came up, and that was whether we should have a traffic light at Treeworthy to get on Route 28. A lot of people testified that we needed a traffic light and said there was a backup there. But the planners said, oh no, we'll put in a turn lane or 2 for you and you'll be just fine. So when my wife goes out of Wesley in the morning, she often tells me that there's a backup getting on the road. She's not too happy about it. When I moved into Wesley, I asked about trash service, and they said there's 3 companies. You can select one of them and pay them. I said, why can't I have one company that just stops at all of the places? That would be a lot more efficient. The answer was no, we need competition and we need 3 trucks instead of 1. The Postal Service could deliver all the parcels for the development. But no, we have to have competition. So we have FedEx, we have UPS, we have LaserShip, we have Amazon, we have the Postal Service. I haven't seen DHL for a while. So we now have quite a number of trucks. I don't know where this stops. We've got a good bit of traffic, we've got a good bit of congestion, we've got a good bit of unfairness to the people on Treeworthy. And what's next? Do we have a dog care center? Do we have a home care center for people that are homeschooling? There are other things that could come in, and then how do you discriminate against them? The fact is, I think 8 is enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else that would like to present testimony?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Vasilios McGuinness, living on 6 Turnham Lane. Chairperson and board members, thanks for having us here.
You're welcome.
I'm representing about 40 homeowners who cannot be here tonight, but they asked me to volunteer and come and speak on their behalf. In an extension of that, what my neighbor just mentioned, that traffic is one of the issues. Safety is another issue. If you bring exhibit 12, please, you're going to see that the Thorburn Road and Redding Ridge are just 2 houses away. At that intersection, there are school buses coming 2 or 3 times a day. Depends the age that they're picking up or the age that they drop. The road is very narrow to have parking around as you're coming from the top and looping around, to have cars parked and have the buses and everything else. That presents a congestion issue, safety issue, that is there, we want it or not. Furthermore, I don't know if the two employees coming by bus or not. Maybe they get rich in the near future and they get cars. But 12 kids and 2 helpers is 14, maybe another person from the house is 15. People coming in the morning and people coming out in the afternoon, I count to about 30 trips. If I'm gonna be more realistic, may say 25. But still, it's about 100 some per week. It's about 450, 500 per month, and goes on. The Wesley development is a residential community and has been a residential community exclusively in the past 40 some years since their creation. Our neighbors, and welcome to the neighborhood, they just 2 months ago they bought the property. They don't know the culture, neither the history of the property, of the development. They try to accommodate their needs and do a daycare center, whatever is the reason, financial, in this 1,475 square feet property. And don't tell me that you can park 6 cars there. To move car 1, you have to get out 3 other cars of the driveway. So all the property owners, we came together and we sit down and talk. We wanted to be sympathetic to the newcomers to the development. We want to be truthful to you, but also we want to look at after our property values. Where exactly you stop this thing? At 8, at 12, a massage place who may come up on the street, a barber shop who wants to open and operate from his house. You have somehow to isolate residential areas from commercial areas. Just across the street there are commercial areas. Why you don't rent some space there and do your business there? For that reason, these 40 families who I'm representing tonight, they cannot be here, and more to come because we learned the news lately, they do not accept this type of thing for the simple reason, where we stop this thing? To the so many trucks coming in, to so many establishments who coming in the neighborhood, they don't know the culture. And on the top, I just paid my property taxes, the first installment the other day. We're approaching $10,000 per property. We're a high taxed area, have been taxed up there, and I don't think we deserve in a development like this, who people buy properties and pay high dollars, pay high property taxes, to come around and have all these establishments who have tendency to bring the values down, bring traffic, bring congestion, bring everything else that does not belong in a development like this. We try to be understandable and helpful, but the majority of the development owners are not. They cannot do that for the simple reason.
So we have about
A writing copy of my
about one more
testimony,
month. Oh, go ahead, please, yeah.
I'll submit it to whoever.
You can hand it to me and we will call this exhibit, this will be exhibit 34.
Feel free to call me.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you.
I have a question. Can I ask him a
Please.
question? Am I allowed
Please.
to?
I'll have to ask Frank. Yes. Sure. Yeah.
Of course you can.
Go
So-
forward.
Exhibit
sorry,
34, you say? Exhibit 34?
This exhibit 34.
Thank you.
And I've forgotten your name, so forgive me.
Please, Mr. Young. Vasilios Magiannis.
Nice to meet you, Mr. McGinnis. Anyway, so the last gentleman, as well as yourself, you had mentioned that tree-worthy is the only way to get in and out of that area?
Correct. This is one way in, one way out development. There is no other way. Everybody who comes in, can you bring a bigger map? We can point at this thing out.
So here's
There you go.
tree-worthy right
So
here.
where's, that's tree-worthy,
This is
okay?
tree-worthy
That's
right here.
tree-worthy.
Yep.
The first street on the left, move your mouse to the first street on the left. First street on the left as you enter. No, you went
I'm
way
sorry.
too far.
Oh, sorry, down this way.
Correct. First street on the left, that's the Reading Ridge. The bus stops right there, stop the mouse in the first intersection, and drops kiddos in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening. Cars also stop there, more people coming in and out. And as you're coming, move your mouse towards to Reading Ridge, follow the Reading Ridge. as you're coming down, you are now on a hill coming down. And really, you don't have big view of the car there. If there are cars coming in and out with the dogs,
Microphone.
Microphone, sorry.
sorry.
That's okay.
If there are cars who coming in and out of the house to drop kids or pick up kids, really they have no visibility, especially if you have something parked next to the house on the
So let
right-hand
me-
side.
And so the other gentleman had mentioned that they were supposed to be under, I guess, some sort of master plan, another entrance and exit. Where was that supposed to be? I'm just curious.
On the
If
back,
you don't know, it's fine.
I'll show you. Can I borrow your mouse?
You need to
No,
be
you
by the
just-
microphone.
Yeah.
Mike, you just tell me.
All right, there,
Right here.
that right there,
Okay.
right there.
And so
Supposed to be-
obviously, that's, I don't think they're gonna add an entrance or an
No.
exit anytime soon.
No, Mr. Young, back there is the woods development now. And if you see the plots extended pretty much to what supposed to be the second entrance, never happened.
Okay.
And again, Miss Miraj,
Miraj. Yeah.
I like to welcome you to the neighborhood. I like
Thank
to be sympathetic to you, but somehow I have been 27 years, and most of the owners here that you see have been 30, 40 years. We like to preserve the culture of the development, all this money that we have invested, all these property taxes that we pay, and preserve this community to a residential community. I mean, we try to think beyond the box and accommodate, and I know the planning commission has done a great job try to accommodate, and all of you want to, but somehow we have to differentiate what is small, what's commercial, and where's supposed to be.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have additional testimony? Please come forward. And if you can state your name, where you live, and 3 minutes.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. My name is Paul Bradley. I live at 33 Reading Ridge Drive. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. Again, I'd like to welcome my neighbors to the neighborhood. It's unfortunately that we don't get to do it on more positive circumstances. A few just brief concerns, some of which have already been mentioned by my neighbors. That curve just in front of 15 can be more dangerous than I think was captured by whoever went out to observe the traffic flow and the parking. If you don't mind zooming in a little bit more in that spot, please. So if I'm coming into the neighborhood, making that left turn on Reading Ridge Drive and winding down and around, often in the afternoons there is a large white van that's parked just beyond the house that's numbered 1 on the right-hand side of the road as you're coming down Reading Ridge. Yep, right about there. And on the left-hand side, just in front of 15, there typically is at least 1 car. This week it's been there all day, like whether it's morning or afternoon, it's been there. And on the right-hand side of the car, between number 14 and the unnumbered house, there's at least 1, 2 cars on a regular basis. This really shrinks that corner. And what happens is when you come down and around, people tend to take a wider berth around those cars that are parked on the right. And the people coming the opposite way, it's a hill coming the other way. It's not a huge hill, but it's enough so that you pick up a little bit of speed and you take that corner going the other way. And what worries me a bit is people loading their children into the car. They have the door open. Cars are going to be in the middle going one way. They're going to be in the middle to get around the parked cars coming the other way. We do have some teenagers in the neighborhood that maybe drive through the neighborhood a little faster than most of us might like. Regardless of that, what worries me is that corner there most in terms of a safety perspective. Just a couple of quick other mentions. I've only lived in the neighborhood compared to my neighbors about 7 years. What I really appreciate, mature trees, very kind of quiet residential streets. I'd like to echo the sentiment mentioned previously about what sort of precedent does this set, and at what point do we say, okay, this is meant to be a residential community, it should remain a residential community. And just touching base with the person who helped us buy our house, the real estate agent who's lived in the community and been an agent over 30 years. just to share with him this and say, what do you think this means in terms of marketability of the neighborhood or house property values? And he was, to be honest, he was astounded at the idea of a 12-child daycare in the community. He just couldn't believe it. He said it's hard to tell what that's going to do to property values. But he would, he'd hope that maybe, I don't know whether people just wouldn't be aware of it at the time if they're looking into the neighborhood. So it does concern me a little bit just in terms of the value of the property. That was it. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Do you have a question, Robert?
Yeah, could be for anybody.
Could you please?
You might be able to answer it for me.
Talk to the microphone, please.
I was
Thank
trying to
you.
avoid questions, I guess.
Okay, 'cause we've had stuff come before this board before in that same neighborhood. On that corner you were talking about, because recognize the speed and, has that fence been taken down yet at the corner?
It was
No,
moved.
It was moved?
Okay, I was going to say that's a
Good.
new fence, but I guess they must have
Okay.
moved it. Yeah.
I just wanted, because that was a blind spot.
Sure.
The last time I went out to, I guess it was 14, or between 14 and 1 there, that fence. So, I recognized that was a very troublesome spot there.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We have additional testimony? Thank you very
I'm
much.
Diana Tibbs, and I live at 9 Redding Ridge.
Thank you.
I'm an original owner, so I've been there for over 40 years, or 45 years. I have noticed over that period of time that street parking has become more and more congested as more people seem to have in excess of 2 cars. So they have to park some on the street. I noticed in the original testimony, they mentioned they had 3 cars, all right, and they have 6 parking spaces, which leaves 3 spaces for their customers. I have noticed on a regular basis that there's 4 cars there late in the evening. I don't know to whom they belonged. I am against a commercial enterprise in Wesley. It has been single-family residences since 1973 when they first broke ground. I moved in 74. I would like to keep it a single-family resident. I've been a citizen of Gaithersburg since 1964, and I moved to Wesley because it was in the city limits, and I wanted to stay in Gaithersburg.
Thank you very much. Please.
Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening.
My name is Glenn Geramifar. I'm the owner of the property at 12 Redding Ridge Drive. I actually have been in front of you before concerning the fence, which is right at the property line of the corner lot. And unfortunately, they went ahead with the fence, and somehow they managed to keep a 6-foot fence right on the property line, which is like 4 feet away from the curb. That by itself is creating an obstacle, a visual obstacle, in terms of the cars coming from either side. It is especially difficult for us to back out of the driveway in order for us to be able to get out. And because the property is located on a curve where the street curve is, and we are approximately across from them, parking on the street, as the other gentleman mentioned, is going to be very hazardous and is going to create an accident waiting to happen. So I, along with the other property owners, prefer not to have any additional cars parked on the streets and to add to the problem that already exists there. So I am opposed to changing the zoning to commercial, but I do welcome the new neighbors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have additional testimony this evening? Yes, please.
Good evening. My name is Lawrence Sinkler. I'm next door to them, and I've let them know at the last meeting I have nothing against them as
Oh,
neighbors.
could you just state your address? Is it?
13 Reading Ridge.
Okay, thank you.
And, I just need to echo the sentiments that's already been made. We can accommodate a commercial business in our neighborhood. As mentioned, there's a bus stop between Thornburn and Reading Ridge. There's a blind curve. There's a huge safety issue. Just this morning, we backing out, someone coming in to the daycare, I had to pump my brakes really hard, so I would have hit them. And I fear for my children coming home in the afternoon when they're walking, and also the other children walking on the other sides. And again, it's nothing against them. I just think, as one of the other speakers said, 8 is enough. We don't need, as you, Mr. Young said, going from 8 to 12 now becomes a commercial business. We don't need that in our neighborhood. And I'm also, concerned about my property values as well. So, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We have additional testimony? Anyone else would like to come up and voice their comments on this matter? Okay, all right. So seeing there's no additional testimony at this time, I will then, I want to thank your time for coming to present your testimony. We as the board appreciate that very much. And so now we're going to move in. So the board's now going to have a discussion about what we have heard in addition from the testimony, but as well as the applicant. So now we talk to each other. Okay.
We don't have an executive session, do we?
Well, if we do request a motion for a closed executive
Right.
session.
Just for a deliberation, if something does arise, we'll address it at that point, but generally, if it becomes an issue, we'll identify it, but there is a certain process that we would have to go through in order to do that. So
Okay.
I don't believe the agenda had any notation of a possible closed
No.
meeting. So we'll take a look at that if it arises, but may not be needed, so we'll see.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, so now I'll open it up to the board for discussion, and I want to remind you of the, as was presented to us this, when Jasmine gave us the opening of the case, that we did have 4 exceptions or 4 notations from the planning board.
I think it's 5 now.
Is it 5?
Yeah.
5, okay, so we had 5, and perhaps we could pull those up from our packet here. Okay, thank you. All right. But we'll certainly, let's have the discussion first, but I wanted to.
Can I read those?
Okay, oh, sure.
Thank you. I've read them, but I want to.
I think I have my copy here. Okay, Sharon, so I'd like to hear the board's thoughts on the, what we just heard about the traffic. And if you have any additional comments about that. I have some thoughts on that, but I certainly wanted to hear your thoughts too.
Well, just on first blush, I do think that this is a situation that's larger than just the daycare, it seems. Yeah, that sounds like a rough road to have to travel in the morning, regardless of whether there's a daycare, whether you're dealing with the multiple delivery trucks, with the bus coming in, with kids going to their houses and to the bus. That's at least where I'm currently sitting on that, regarding just how potentially 2 to 4 more drop-offs, depending on if there's siblings involved or whatnot, is really going to create that much more of an impact than what already seems to exist, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. I did notice in our packets that we did have a report from the engineer, because apparently because it's a 40-year-old neighborhood, the streets are a little wider there. I live in an older neighborhood also, and that the wide streets did exist for older development. So as stated here, was on Exhibit 28 from Sandy Gross, the project engineer from the Department of Public Works for Gaithersburg. She talks about that there is a 36-foot wide street, and that the existing site distance provides the means of a site distance required for Montgomery County at the posted speed of 25 miles per hour. So, yes, there are those cars that can go faster than 25 miles per hour also in a neighborhood. Additionally, looking at the operating hours, with the operating hours concluding at 6 p.m., then that's it for the pickup of the kids, of the children.
But that is the main time of day when people usually come home too.
Yes, but I think as we had heard through the testimony, that it is staggered drop-off as well as staggered pickup. And normally it's not, daycare is just a drop-off and a pickup.
Well, what I normally, with daycare, excuse me, the demographics change constantly. You'll have a lot of older kids, and you'll have a lot of younger kids. You'll have school age, you won't have school age. You'll have everybody that has to drop off at 7, and people, you know what I mean? Because currently it's staggered. But I don't know if we could make a decision based on the current schedule, because it changes, I think.
Well, this is what we have to work with, is right here, right now.
Yeah.
This is it. This is our time frame. And so, as we look to the role of the Board of Appeals in this particular matter, is that, we are looking to the actual zoning itself there. So it was already approved that the state allows.
Could have 8.
Have up to 8, and that the text amendment from the city of Gaithersburg, coming in line more with what the county was doing, is the four additional children. So that's what we're looking at, really, is just that unit of 4 children. That's
Exactly.
our role as the Board of Appeals.
That's what's within our
Well,
jurisdiction.
and I fully understand that. The only thing I might add is because I am concerned with one way in, one way out. Because what that does is it does create havoc, because people know it's only one way in and one way out. In other words, the FedEx, the gentleman brought up the delivery companies, those guys know there's one way in and one way out. And they need to get in and get out because they're on a time schedule. And so I do think that changes the dynamics a little bit for me. I didn't realize that when we were going through, when I read the original testimony via email.
But I'm just pointing this out, that one of our conditions that will be included if we do approve the resolution is that the vehicular impact related to the daycare will be monitored. So, could be other ways to address it that are outside of our purview. But I do agree that was something I was not aware of. So it's definitely something to consider.
Well, and I also had discussion with staff earlier. You can approve this for a year to get a feeling for how things
Yeah.
are going,
Okay, I didn't actually know that, so that's good.
and then come back.
We would probably recommend 2 years. The reason for that being is every 2 years they need to be reapproved by the state.
Okay.
And that lines up with our requirements of the fire marshal to re-review the facility for life safety.
Well, and so my concern is not, and that's a valid point, is just, again, the one way in and one way out. I just think that really changes the dynamics, and I know it's only 4 cars.
Yeah.
But, you just don't know.
But I do like that idea, though, of possibly approving it for 2 years, seeing what the impact is, and
I would
Sorry,
just
Caroline.
suggest, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
If you go in that direction, it wouldn't be that they would need to reapply for the special exception. It would be a review. We've done this before with boarding houses, rooming
Right.
houses. They come before the board every certain number of years for a review. It's not a new application. It doesn't void the existing special exception, but they would get a review and an opportunity for anybody in the neighborhood to come and testify again.
Okay.
My only thing with that, 1 year, 2 year, whatever, and I own a small business too, you get set in your ways, and then all of a sudden, you get something taken away from you, and then all of a sudden, you're used to, say, monetary, certain way of life or whatever, you get something taken away from you, and it could be a hardship.
Absolutely.
And I certainly understand that. So I agree
So
with
that would
that
have to
as
be-
well. Yeah, that's another angle to it. I'm just struggling with the whole one way in and one way out. I think that's an issue.
And I think that's a valid, very valid issue. I think, however, just looking at the map, it's something that was done by the developer. That
Well, I think what happened though, if you can shrink this
Shrink
map.
this map, it looks like
From
the
my
access point.
I
So-
can give a little background
Okay,
on
give
that.
some-
Actually, from my
That'd be great.
understanding, Reading Ridge Drive was intended to connect with the other development, the adjacent development what came in.
And that other development is
The Wesley neighborhood
Washington.
actually at that time though objected to that, and that is why the connection never occurred.
Oh.
Is that Washingtonian Woods, that other street, or?
No, that's,
That's,
Alderwood Drive, are you talking about the
That street, yeah.
Alderwood Drive?
that's not Washingtonian Woods.
Same development?
No,
Separate
the wood,
development.
it's the woods.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, if I
So-
was down at the end of the street and all of a sudden you have a cut through, I'd be a little upset with cutting it through there too.
But the developer got to put a couple more houses in, it looks like.
So,
Just saying.
But thank you, Greg, for that additional
That's
information, and thank
interesting.
you, Gary, for bringing that up again. Yeah, so that's, you know, I think when we look at one of the conditions here, the vehicle impact related to the daycare use shall be monitored to ensure that there are no adverse impacts, and that the 2-year review is certainly something that we can consider
I think-
and add to the resolution if.
But if there was a violation of the condition, that wouldn't be limited to 2 years. If
Okay.
there's a violation
Thank
of the condition in 3 months,
Okay.
then that could be raised even at that time.
And so what's the process there? Let's just say somebody feels like there's a violation because the traffic, in their opinion, is a little more than was anticipated. What do they have to file? They have to contact the city, or how's?
there is a process by which someone could request that the Board of Appeals relook at, have another hearing. We don't do that very often. I can't recall that I have gone through that process, but there is a part of the code that would allow a staff member or for a show cause hearing to make sure that the special exception was operating within the conditions that was placed on it. So there is a process for that.
And the board would be authorized,
Right.
if need be, to amend or modify, not just at the 2 years, but based on the process Carolyn's talking about.
So we would amend the
Mhm.
original
You could.
resolution then,
Amend
okay,
or modify.
if we were going down that pathway.
And so we could even mention a year if you wanted, even though staff doesn't recommend it because of the cycle of the licensing.
We could mention a year, I just.
I'm not saying we would.
We would, but yeah, we
Yeah.
usually do the boarding houses on a 2-year basis, and I think we want to see this cycle on a.
Well, I think
And
they have to show that they have zoning approval or some level of approval from the city for the period of the state license. I believe that's what I heard, that it's a 2-year
I believe it is, from our research, that they have to basically go back, I think, and you can clarify me if I'm wrong on that, but I think that's my understanding, every 2 years.
So when did you apply for this license?
For 8, 2013, for 8,
They-
not for 12.
This hearing comes before the application for the
Yes.
state to
Got it, so
get
there'll be a
approved.
new license for 12
The,
days.
Yeah.
the state won't
They
issue
won't-
her
they-
license until
Right.
such time as they
It's not an
receive zoning
amendment to
approval
a
from the
license,
city.
it's a new license.
So the license for the 8 was issued, was it June 4th?
For
Yep.
the new address, yeah.
Yeah, for the new address.
June 4th, 2018?
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it's a
Same
little
here.
bit of a chicken and egg thing. They won't approve for 12 unless they already have
Well,
approval
I-
from the city. We had hoped, we had originally asked for that approval, and it's actually the other way around. So it's the city's decision first, and then the state.
Well, I have a lot of state licenses, so with mine, if there's a change, they don't cancel licensing, reissue, they just add an amendment to that
Right,
current
okay.
license, and then it stays and then it renews under those new conditions, and in this case,
And
it would be
it's
less
the
than
date
2
would be
years.
June
It would
fourth.
It'd be
be,
June of 2020.
that's right, yeah.
So I just wanted to add for the record that I actually was the staff person that went and observed some of the traffic and drop off and pick up, and I'll just provide the facts as I observed them. I was there Tuesday morning. It was raining a little bit, not like tonight. And I was there between about 7:30 and about 8:40, so in time to see the bus stop for the I believe it was elementary school bus stop. And during the time that I was there, I'll just tell you that through that intersection, there were 21 cars coming and going both directions, and one drop-off at the daycare during that time. This evening, I was there again in the torrential rain, so I can't say that it's a kind of a typical
Normal.
evening, but I was there between, and I couldn't stay the whole time because I had to come here, but I was here from about 5:30, there from about 5:30 to 6:15, so about 45 minutes. There were 20 cars that came through. Again, both directions. There was not really a pattern of everybody coming home or everybody leaving in either case. And I did observe, I think there were 3 pickups at the same time. So there is some activity at the location of the daycare. And there are some cars on the street. And there most definitely are people that drive too fast. None of them were coming to the daycare. They were all people going through. In fact, I think it would be difficult to speed if you were going to that house because it's on the curve.
Right.
You'd have to slow down before you got there. But I would encourage people in the Wesley community to slow down there because it is, people take that turn too fast. That is true. I'm not sure that has, it has further bigger implications than whether or not the daycare is there. So that was just my observation. So I would say there's a car every 2 to 3 minutes, morning and evening.
Thank you, Caroline. Do we have any other discussion? I think we covered all the 5 points that are here. If you need them again, it's right here. But it involves that when if the business should cease, so does our special exception. The operating hours are limited to the hours specified in the applicant's statement. There is a maximum of 12 children are permitted on the site at this time. And as mentioned, we are really just looking at the additional 4 children. Applicants must comply with all zoning, building, and fire code regulations prior to the commencement of operations, and that we've talked in detail from all sides regarding the vehicle impact related to the daycare use from that time. Any further discussion?
Here.
All right. So let me get my sheet here somewhere. This time we will, bear with me.
This one right here.
No, I think I will call for a motion, but let me
We
get to
have to
my.
close the record first?
Let's see, we discussed and desire motion, no?
No,
We just, our motion to, now we will ask for a motion to approve or deny the application and the resolution, which is before us. So we need to have a motion for the actual draft resolution that we have in front of us. Do you have another question?
Well, can we move to approve the resolution with amendments regarding the review period?
We can. So how would you, let's talk as a board, how would you like that to be worded? So we have that for the record and our discussion.
Well, since I spoke up, let's see, would that be one of the, added as a condition?
Yeah, I mean, I have a condition that I can propose that we have used for other applications, if you're looking for it, like a 2-year timeframe. So you could have a condition that read something like, this special exception is granted for 2 years. The applicant shall be required to renew this application within a 2-year period, or sooner upon the request of the Department of Planning and Code Administration, and then define when that next review period would be. So September of 2020.
So you wouldn't do it on the, because she would, in theory, would renew her license for 12.
Yeah, we could do it, you could start it.
I would do it prior to the next
June.
renewal.
Okay, so
prior to that.
Right,
So she doesn't,
we can do that. And then
renew a
it would be
license for
2 years.
12.
Right.
And then there's an issue, and then all of a sudden she can only have 8.
So we can define it as prior to June 2020, and then it coincide then with the licensing.
Just in terms of the way the license here or the permission here works, are we confident that this would be an amendment to the existing license that was issued in June? The reason why I'm asking that is because it turns out to be wrong. That means she's not going to get state approval. We'll probably be back here for an amendment if that turns out to be the case. So just so that we're certain about that.
Well, we need to clarify
speculating.
it, I think.
Exactly.
I don't think anybody's certain on that.
If we're not certain on that, that could be worded to say June 2020 or whenever this 2-year license expires.
Perfect.
That would give
Bingo.
you some ability to target what you're trying to do,
Thank you,
just in
Fran.
case the facts don't line
I
up.
think that's a little more laser focused kind of discussion,
I like it.
verbiage that we have there. So thank you.
It's more clear.
More clear.
Then I would make a motion that the Board of Appeals, based on the findings and conclusions outlined in the draft resolution as amended, and incorporating tonight's discussion, approve the special exception application BOA 7953-2018 and adopt the resolution BOA 7953-2018 with the amendments as discussed.
With I would say the 5 conditions, 6
Six.
conditions.
6 conditions as discussed.
I need a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? No?
Not at this point,
All
but
right.
you'll find out in a minute.
Okay. Any further discussion? No? All right, from the board? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Chair Rig, I
Okay, thank
think
you.
for the record, you should include some discussion about how
Okay.
it complies with 24
Oh, okay.
189.
Yeah, so, as was presented in our packet ahead of time and posted on the website, was a discussion about 24-189, which is the first time we're actually, with the text amendment to those zoning regs there, that we're actually discussing this matter. Because the text amendment was passed by the council, city council, back in November 2017. And so with that, there was some discussion there, and I do have the notes here. Here we go. Just wanted to bring to your attention, which was exhibit number 13, where it discusses R90 medium density residential, and you know that this particular zoning regulation is already within our zoning regs. That what we're looking at here is because it's R90, that I'm not doing it justice to summarize, but the accessory uses for those that live in a cluster development, which is section 24-30, does talk about permitted uses within single-family detached dwellings. And as we see there in item number 3, it's section 24-30, it's section 4, paragraph 4, then subsection C, it does talk about the family daycare facilities in single-family dwellings. And as we talked about, that number 8 now has been increased to 12 based on the text amendment that was passed by the City Council in November 2017. Do we have additional questions?
Well, actually, it's added to the one after that, which is as a special exception.
As a special exception, thank you, Frank.
The 8 by right is still there, but it's 2429 that has the 12 as a special exception.
Okay.
I believe, and under the same conditions you were talking about.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you, Fran.
Sure.
So do we have any further discussion? Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to, for some of you to get on the record, how the special exception complies with 24-189, which is the board's findings. So
These are the required ones for every special
Right.
exception.
Right.
Yeah.
That it fits within the zone, which you have discussed that,
Yeah.
and then complies with requirements, et cetera, et cetera. That should be part of your.
Part of the resolution.
First page, take a quick look.
Okay.
You read them in an hour. We got plenty of time.
We could be a team, it's fine.
I think as we look there for the scope of review, as we noted that there will be no changes to the existing structure, which is the single-family home, and that we have noted that there is a fence permit that has already been issued by the city for their backyard.
And it meets the standards and requirements set forth, both regarding the operation of the daycare and has met the needs of the planning commission. As for the third, where it talks about not being detrimental to the use and peaceful enjoyment of the surrounding area, I believe that our resolution meets that in the fact that we are opening it up for review and for monitoring. So we can see exactly what the impact of the daycare is on the surrounding neighborhood.
Agreed.
Check that one off.
Well, I hear what, I sort of agree with you, but I can also see the other side of that. Simply because the 8-person daycare has only been, how long has it been in existence?
2 months.
2 months?
There.
Yeah. So they really haven't even gotten used to that part of it yet to see the total impact of it.
Exactly.
And then you're already increasing it, right out of the blocks, basically.
That's my main issue.
You do have a separate condition on the vehicular impact, though, that it, as I said before, is not limited to the 2 years. So that could be raised. I'm assuming it would be looked into if a concern was raised initially, just to find out what the facts are. But that could be brought to you well before the 2-year time frame.
Right.
Under the process if there is a concern with that. So, and hopefully there would be some communication with the applicant to avoid an ongoing problem, but you're not necessarily limited to only the 2-year review if again, there is an identified problem and a complaint.
Did you have any other questions with that? And as we heard, that this is a busy neighborhood because everybody in the city of Gaithersburg has to get their own garbage truck to come through the neighborhood. So that is a very common activity that is there already. And I think the same too, that we have different ways of getting things delivered to our homes, different carriers there too. So that's wanted to just put in the context of this is a bustling type area
And
with
al- oh,
other
sorry,
activities.
go
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
And also, I do want to just say that I think staff's observations, Caroline's observations of the area at high traffic times were rather enlightening for me, just at the breakdown of who was actually going where. I think that's important. Again, it's not on a normal day because it was raining. We all know that complicates things. But I did find that also illuminating and thinking about what's the actual impact.
Yes. But I do think from our conditions that we've listed here and now, as looking at the zoning and the special exception application is in compliance here, that I do believe that we have considered, not fully considered, but let's just say we've considered those impacts with the knowledge that we have here this evening.
If you all are ready to proceed with the motion too, because I know now you're paused, I'm not saying you have to, but you could simply say, okay, we call the motion, because you did have
There's a motion on the table.
you did have a second, so.
Yes, yeah.
Unless there's any further question as to what that included.
Any further questions?
The other thing, and it may be in just the way I'm thinking, it's too bad we didn't have more of a study of how the 8-person went without going directly into the 12. That's my biggest concern.
That is a true statement.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that is, and so looking, if the study would be involved regarding vehicular traffic, that condition has been set up, and as we've been informed by Frank, that doesn't have to be in a 2-year time period. So, I mean, that is the study.
Yeah. I just hate to something happening the other way and then,
I think we have a condition in place if that's a concern. For me, I see that as something that it's a condition that's will be monitored.
And again, as Frank stated, if that did become an issue because of the condition as well, we could require them to come back before you as the board at any time.
But I own a small business as well as Robert, and I've had things taken away from me, and it's never a positive feeling. Just to throw that out there.
But it is part of what a special exception is. So again, the review of the special exception is any adverse impacts on the neighborhood. And if those adverse impacts do materialize in the future, it is appropriate for the board to re-review the application.
That is correct. We do that with the cell phone towers.
Mm-hmm.
Just as, now we require a coverage map. That was an evolution of something that wasn't there before, and that's how we got it resolved. I'm just saying from that perspective that we have put in what was presented to us by the Planning Commission. We have added our own exception, or our own condition. in addition to what
Waiver.
they had heard.
Waiver find it.
To find that a little more clearer. Are there any other questions? Gary or Robert? No, this is the inaugural. Somebody has to be first. And this is us as a board, this is our, first case before us with a text amendment that had been passed in a previous timeframe.
I tell you, this is all new.
Yeah.
They've just, when did the council adopt this?
Last November. So this is the first case.
And I just struggle with being the first, the entrance situation, regardless of the reason. And not having it established and, so the neighborhood can get used to a daycare in their neighborhood.
And part of that limit too is, bear in mind, the 8 is by right.
Right.
Right, exactly.
So
Yeah.
that really is not part of what you're looking at today at all. It's the additional 4.
Right.
As opposed to establishing it at the beginning. And that is the distinction, because of that additional 4, that you do have the power to condition it with the special exception process, and the power to bring it back if there is a problem. And that can be important, and that's the importance of the conditions that you have, that you are adding, that were recommended, but also what you're talking about adding tonight.
And getting back to the taking away something, not only on the business owner, say if the additional 4 really like where they are, and then all of a sudden that gets taken away, they gotta go find another daycare. There's just a lot of things just, I don't know, really jumbling my mind right now about this whole situation.
A counterpoint to that, because I definitely understand the logic behind that and the feelings behind that, but then that also gives the applicant a greater incentive to make sure that everyone, all of her clients are abiding by best practices in the use of the road. And hopefully with as many welcomings to the neighborhood as they've received tonight, there can be a bit greater dialogue regarding the use of that communal space.
As I had previously mentioned, it's a daycare, so there's not going to be a lot of visiting. They're just gonna go in, drop them off, because this is a service that's being provided that people have hired to watch their children, trust their care with their children. So that's what we're looking at there. And right now, is from what I saw, there's 3 or 4 cars for 8 children at this point. But to your point, that demographics doesn't always stay the same.
And I know we're supposed to look at it right now,
But yeah,
you're approving something that's gonna go on.
for 2 years
Right.
with our condition that we
Right.
put forth.
Or end a lot sooner if it doesn't go okay.
Right.
Which I know is not the ideal, especially for the business owner. I'm just,
But I would say that the vehicle conditions were passed along to us from the planning commission.
right.
So this is a process that we're part of the process. Any other questions?
So they just waiting for me?
No, I just, it's, because we're on, you know, we don't want to have the dead time, but
Right.
the other time, you know, we can think about these
Well, it's
things.
been moved and seconded. so
Moved and
it's more-
seconded.
Yep.
I mean, are you ready for me to call for the vote? I want to make sure that you're just, if there's something else you'd like to bring up.
I'll tell you, I think one of the things that it's tough on the community as well is the fact that a lot of people aren't aware, and myself included, you're not aware of these, what are they called, laws, for lack of a better word, or ordinances that pass, you know, that increase a daycare in a single-family home from 8 to 12 kids, and I think it catches a lot of people off guard. When I know people I've spoken to about it, just getting their take on daycare in general and 8 to 12.
Yeah, I mean, it went through a complete public hearing process in
And
the
I'm sure it
city.
did, yeah.
So,
And I know it was done correctly, and
Right.
yeah, absolutely. But at the end of the day, everybody's
yeah,
busy.
until it comes to your neighborhood, you don't you
Right,
don't have to
yeah.
pay attention. I understand.
Yeah.
Or you're on the Board of Appeals.
We learn a lot.
And I guess the flip side would be that, you know, we do live in a very growing, popular part of the country here, you know, and that people do come to this area. We are strong economics, and that there is a need for
Absolutely.
this.
Sure there is.
There's a, you know, probably a very great need at this time, but there is a need.
Well, and that was the genesis of the text amendment in the first place, was requests for more variety and more affordable daycare within the city. And the council brought the city's requirements more in line with it roughly parallels the county's zoning ordinance now. There's some confusion among daycare providers even. They could do one thing in the county and a different thing in the city, and so they're kind of more in line with each other now and with the state.
So what we have before us, in procedure-wise, is that we've had the motion, we've had it
It's
seconded,
seconded.
we've had it also amended to add the sixth condition as previously discussed, which puts in a roughly 2-year review, but the actual traffic itself can be done in a real-time basis. That we don't have to wait 2 years for that. We can be done, you know, like I said, on a real-time basis.
And it could be for, not just traffic, but it can be noise or disruption. Is that a fair statement?
Those are things, yes, that could bring it back to the board.
It's not just traffic, it's disruption, it's noise.
Correct.
And anything that you would consider a violation of the findings.
Of these 6 conditions?
No, of 24-189, which is
Well,
the
yeah,
special
those are the
exception.
That's the
under which
60,
you-
Okay.
yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, they apply as well, yes. That's a good point. And it's probably helpful to make that point as part of the record here.
Is that something
As
you
you, yes,
you can strengthen, I guess, or?
it could be, but 24-189, which is the code section you're talking about, does list the adverse impacts, all of the ones you just did list. So
Okay.
that being part of the record, that too could be a basis to have an earlier hearing and consider any violation of that. That's also important to point out.
Well, and I think for the opposition, I think it's important that this is all public record stuff,
Right,
so they're aware.
absolutely, yes.
They
Right.
have this information.
And
No.
plus, especially with all the, you know, the one gentleman, yeah, everybody knows everybody, it's a tight-knit community, so word needs to spread throughout the neighborhood that that's something that, you know, if there are issues, you know, it's not necessarily just 2 years, it can be a month.
Right.
Right, real time.
They
It's a
have
real-
options.
Yeah, yeah. These are, that's why we have these types of zoning rules here.
I'm ready if
I
you are.
heard that breath. I heard that letting go. So I'm just waiting for it now. So, Ashley, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Robert, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to. So we have the motion on the table. Does everybody understand which? I'm going to call for the vote. Is there any additional clarifications needed? Okay. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Opposed?
The motion passes 4-0.
No, no,
3-1.
Oh,
3-1. 3-1, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Rob.
I'm sorry. The motion passes 3-1. Thank you. Sorry about that. All right. Now we will move on to from the staff. And this concludes our hearing of the case that was before us, just to let the audience know. Now we will do some administrative work here, but you're welcome to stay. Okay. Do you have any additional information from the staff this evening?
No, I just will mention, we did receive 2 applications for potential alternate positions for the Board of Appeals, so I was very pleased that we finally might be getting another person on the board to help out when we have quorum issues, so we'll see how soon that we can get somebody else here, but that's moving forward. And next meeting in October, we do not, at the current time, have any applications, so I think the deadline is maybe next Tuesday, so you should be hearing from me shortly if we are going to cancel that meeting.
What would be the date of that? Sorry, I know I asked
I
the
forgot to write it down.
Yeah, I figured as soon as I asked the question. Oh, well, no,
I
I
believe it's October 24th.
No, it would be the second
That'd be too
Wednesday,
late.
second Wednesday in October.
Sorry,
I
correct.
don't have a
That's
calendar.
Historic District Commission, October 10th.
October 10th, thank you.
Thank you, Caroline.
Yep.
Thank you.
And Frank, is there anything you want to share, or Greg?
We are having,
And Trudy.
the Maryland Planning Commissioners Association is that what you were gonna do? If you're gonna do that, you go ahead. I will let Trudy
Yes,
tell you.
you have received an email from me about the Maryland Planning Commission Association, which is also the Board of Appeals are members of that because they have training that is for Planning Commission and Board of Appeals members, and many of you have completed that training. There's also an open meetings seminar, which is co-taught by Mr. Johnson here, and some other things. And it is at the Holiday Inn in Gaithersburg, so not too far to come. And just please let me know and I will register you for that. It's a 2-day seminar. There are some people who can only make it for one day of it, but we just really want to get you to the meetings.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Trudy. Anything else? Frank?
No?
All right. Anything else from the board? Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn?
A motion that we adjourn the September 12th, 2018 meeting.
I second.
We are adjourned. Thank you.